Before Judge Evelyn Hale could sentence Marcus Brooks to 22 years in prison, the courtroom doors flew open, and his 16-year-old daughter walked inside carrying a burned violin. Black ash covered Nia Brooks's yellow dress. A fresh cut ran across her forehead, and one side of her tightly braided hair had come loose. Two courthouse security officers followed close behind, ordering her to stop, but Nia kept walking until she reached the wooden barrier separating the public seats from the court. "Your Honor," she said, struggling to catch her breath, "that violin heard who started the fire." The courtroom went silent. Marcus stood beside his attorney with chains around his wrists. He looked at his daughter as if he had just seen her step into the path of an oncoming train. "Nia, sit down," he pleaded. "Please, this is not your fight." She tightened her grip on the blackened violin case. "It became my fight when they decided to send an innocent man to prison." District Attorney Calvin Rusk rose from the prosecution table. "Your Honor, this is a sentencing hearing, not a school performance." The defendant's daughter is attempting to create an emotional distraction because the evidence against her father is overwhelming. Nia turned toward him. "The evidence is overwhelming because somebody built it that way." Several people in the public gallery whispered. Reporters who had been preparing to leave raised their phones and cameras. Judge Hale struck her gavel. Silence. She was 63, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and known throughout Fairmont County for handing down sentences without hesitation. 12 years earlier, her only daughter had died in an apartment fire. Since then, Judge Hale had become especially severe in cases involving arson. Marcus Brooks had been convicted of setting fire to the Hopewell Community Arts Center, stealing $340,000 from its renovation fund, and destroying financial records to hide the theft. To Judge Hale, the case had appeared painfully simple. Marcus had been the building's head custodian. His electronic badge had opened the rear entrance 17 minutes before the fire. Gasoline residue had been discovered inside his work locker. The missing money had been transferred using his employee login. A witness claimed to have seen his truck leaving the neighborhood after midnight. Every piece fit. At least, that was what the court had been told. Judge Hale looked at Nia's burned violin. "You have interrupted a formal proceeding," she said. "Give me one reason security should not remove you immediately." Nia placed the case carefully on the wooden barrier. "Because there's a recorder inside it." Calvin Rusk shook his head. "A recorder that appeared after the trial ended. How convenient." "It didn't appear after the trial," Nia replied. "It was trapped inside the Arts Center the entire time." Marcus closed his eyes. He knew what violin she was carrying. It had belonged to Nia's mother, Camille, who had died from cancer 3 years earlier. Camille had played it every Sunday at church. Before she passed away, she gave it to Nia and told her that music could carry truth into places where ordinary words were ignored. The violin had been stored in the Hopewell Center on the night of the fire because Nia had been rehearsing for a scholarship audition. Fire investigators told her that everything in the music room had been destroyed. That morning, however, demolition workers had opened a sealed storage closet in the building's least damaged section. Nia had entered before the remaining debris was removed and found the violin beneath a collapsed metal shelf. The instrument was scorched. Its strings were melted, its bridge was broken, and its wooden body had cracked along one side. But inside the case, beneath a layer of burned sheet music, Nia found the small voice-activated recorder she used during rehearsals. Judge Hale studied her carefully. "You are claiming that this device recorded the night of the fire." "Not the fire itself," Nia said. "It recorded the people who planned it." A murmur spread across the courtroom. Calvin Rusk immediately objected. "No chain of custody, no verification. No indication that this device even came from the building. The child could have recorded anyone at any time." Nia opened the case. The smell of smoke drifted through the courtroom. She removed the recorder, which was half melted but still recognizable, and held it up. The date and time are stored inside it. I listened to part of the recording before the battery died. What did you hear? Judge Hale asked. Nia looked past the prosecutor toward the first row of reserved seats. Fire Marshal Raymond Denton sat there in his dark blue uniform. He had supervised the investigation that proved Marcus had started the fire. Nia raised one trembling finger and pointed directly at him. I heard that man telling someone to use my father's badge. Every camera turned toward Denton. His face remained calm, but his right hand tightened around the armrest. That is a lie, he said. Nia did not lower her hand. Then you shouldn't be afraid to let the court hear it. Judge Hale stared at the recorder. She had spent decades learning the difference between nervous desperation and genuine certainty. Nia was frightened, but there was no confusion in her eyes. There was purpose. Bailiff, Judge Hale ordered, bring the device to the clerk. Calvin Rusk stepped forward. Your Honor, allowing this spectacle rewards misconduct. The defendant has already received a full trial. A full trial based on complete evidence, Judge Hale answered. If relevant evidence was excluded or undiscovered, then the court has a duty to examine it. The device could contaminate the entire proceeding. The proceeding may already be contaminated. Those words caused Rusk to stop. The bailiff placed the recorder inside a clear evidence bag. A courthouse technology specialist connected it to an isolated computer. At first, nothing happened. Then the courtroom speakers released a blast of static. A door creaked in the recording. Something metallic fell. Footsteps moved across a hard floor. A man's damaged voice emerged beneath the crackling noise. Midnight, rear entrance. More static swallowed the sentence. A second voice appeared. Brooks' badge, make sure the camera sees it. Nia stared at Denton. His expression had changed. The first voice returned. After the transfer clears, light the east stairwell. Judge Hale leaned forward. The recording broke apart again. For several seconds, only hissing filled the room. Then one final fragment came through. Hale file should have taught you fires erase everything. Judge Hale's face lost its color. Stop the recording. The specialist paused it. No one moved. Calvin Rusk cleared his throat. Your Honor, those words are incomplete. We cannot determine who is speaking or what the conversation concerns. Judge Hale continued staring at the computer. What is the Hale file? Nia asked. The judge did not answer immediately. 12 years earlier, her daughter Lillian had lived at Marston Towers, a downtown apartment building owned by Kessler Urban Development. The fire began in an electrical room shortly after midnight. The official investigation concluded that a maintenance worker had ignored repeated wiring problems and accidentally caused a transformer failure. That maintenance worker, a 54-year-old immigrant named Tomas Rivera, was convicted of criminal negligence. Judge Hale had not presided over his trial, but she had publicly supported the prosecution. She believed his carelessness had killed Lillian and 6 other residents. Tomas died in prison 4 years later. For more than a decade, Judge Hale had never questioned the official story, until a burned recorder spoke her name. She looked at Fire Marshal Denton. Were you involved in the Marston Towers investigation? Denton shifted in his seat. I was a deputy investigator at the time. Did that investigation contain a file bearing my name? Not that I remember. You investigated the fire that killed my daughter and you do not remember. There were hundreds of documents, Your Honor. Judge Hale turned to the bailiff. No one leaves this courtroom. Calvin Rusk's voice became tense. Your Honor, Fire Marshal Denton is not a defendant. Neither are the other people present. Then they should have no objection to remaining until I understand what I just heard. Judge Hale ordered the recorder transferred to the State Forensic Audio Laboratory. She also suspended Marcus's sentencing and directed the clerk to retrieve every document connected to the Hopewell fire, including drafts, deleted reports, witness statements, computer logs, and internal communications. When Calvin Rusk protested again, she cut him off. "Mr. Rusk, an innocent man may be standing in chains because somebody decided the court did not deserve the truth. Until I know otherwise, this hearing is no longer about sentencing. It is about whether a crime was committed inside my courtroom." Marcus was escorted into a private consultation room. Nia ran to him before the guards could close the door. He wrapped his chained arms around her. "You could have been hurt inside that building," he whispered. "They were going to destroy everything today. You should have called Ms. Reed." "I did." Her phone was off because she was already in court. Marcus looked at the ash covering his daughter's hands. "You went in alone. A demolition worker helped me reach the music room. The floor started falling when I was coming back." Marcus's eyes filled with anger and fear. "No evidence is worth losing you. You're worth it." He lowered his forehead against hers. For 7 months, Marcus had watched his daughter visit him through reinforced glass. He had listened as she described overdue bills, cruel comments at school, and reporters waiting outside their small house. He had repeatedly told her to keep living. Nia had repeatedly refused to live as if her father were already gone. Attorney Alana Reed entered the consultation room carrying 3 thick folders. She was a black defense attorney in her early 40s who had taken Marcus's case after the public defender's office became overwhelmed. She had argued from the beginning that the evidence looked unusually perfect. Real crimes were messy. The case against Marcus had arrived organized, labeled, timed, and ready for television. "Nia," Alana said, "tell me exactly how you found that recorder." Nia described the sealed closet, the demolition crew, and the damaged violin case. "Did anyone see you remove it?" 3 workers. "One of them recorded me on his phone because he thought I was stealing. That video may establish where the recorder came from." Alana turned to Marcus. "Now we return to the question the investigators never seriously examined. Why would anyone choose you?" Marcus sat down slowly. "I told you, 3 days before the fire I found inspection documents in the basement." "What documents?" "Reports saying the building had serious structural damage and asbestos behind the east wall, but the reports were signed 6 months before the city announced the renovation project." Alana frowned. If city officials knew the building was unsafe, why approve millions in renovation grants? "That's what I asked the center director. She told me the reports were probably outdated." Later that day, Fire Marshal Denton came to the building and ordered me to give him every copy. "Did you?" "I gave him the file I found." "Every copy?" Marcus hesitated. "No." Nia looked at him. "You kept one." "I photographed several pages on my phone. The next morning my phone disappeared from my locker." Alana moved closer. "Who knew you had taken the photographs?" "The center director, Denton, and Gordon Kessler." The name brought silence into the room. Gordon Kessler was the founder of Kessler Urban Development, the company selected to renovate Hopewell Center. He was one of Fairmont's richest businessmen. His company owned hotels, apartment complexes, shopping centers, and nearly half the property surrounding Hopewell. Alana opened a new page in her notebook. "Why was Kessler at the Arts Center?" "He came for a private inspection. I heard him arguing with the director. He said if the project was delayed, the entire neighborhood deal would collapse." "What neighborhood deal?" "I don't know." Nia remembered something. "Dad, 2 weeks before the fire, you said someone offered you a new job." Marcus nodded. "Kessler's operations manager offered me 3 times my salary to work at another property. And when you refused, he told me loyalty could become expensive." Alana exhaled. "They tried to remove you quietly. When that failed, they removed you permanently." Marcus looked toward the locked door. "But how did they transfer the money using my login?" "That part may be easier than it appeared," Alana said. "Someone with administrative access could reset your password. Your badge could have been copied. Gasoline could have been placed inside your locker." Nia looked at her father's handcuffs. And everyone believed it because he was the easiest person to blame. Marcus had worked at Hopewell Center for 11 years. He fixed leaking roofs, cleaned classrooms, repaired instruments, and taught children basic music when instructors failed to appear. He understood every entrance, alarm, camera, and electrical panel. That knowledge made him valuable to the community. It also made him the perfect suspect. 2 hours later, Judge Hale reconvened the hearing. The State Forensic Laboratory had recovered 27 minutes of audio. Much of it remained damaged, but analysts had isolated 3 distinct male voices. One voice belonged to Fire Marshal Raymond Denton. The comparison was not yet legally conclusive, but the preliminary match probability was above 90%. Denton was no longer sitting in the gallery. He was standing beside an attorney. Judge Hale ordered him to surrender his badge and firearm until the investigation was complete. His lawyer objected. "Your Honor, you are acting on an unverified recording presented by a child with an obvious motive to fabricate evidence." Judge Hale's stare hardened. "The child did not fabricate your client's voice. We do not concede that it is his voice. Then he may explain why it resembles him so closely." Denton refused to answer questions. Judge Hale next called retired firefighter Lena Ortiz, whose name Alana found buried inside an unsigned investigative memo. Lena entered the courtroom using a cane. She had responded to the Hopewell fire but retired 3 months later. She testified that she saw a city fire inspection vehicle parked behind the Arts Center 40 minutes before the alarm was reported. "Who was inside it?" Alana asked. "I couldn't see the driver clearly, but I recognized the vehicle number. Did you report this?" "Yes, twice." "To whom?" "Fire Marshal Denton." Denton's attorney stood. "Objection. My client was supervising an emergency scene. A witness may have misunderstood routine activity." Lena looked directly at Denton. "The vehicle was gone when our engines arrived." Judge Hale leaned forward. "Was your statement included in the official report?" "No, Your Honor." "Were you ever asked to sign a written version?" "No." "Why did you retire?" Lena's hand tightened around her cane. "Because 2 days after I reported what I saw, someone loosened the fuel line on my truck. It caught fire while I was driving home." The gallery erupted. Judge Hale struck the gavel repeatedly. Lena continued after the room settled. "I couldn't prove who did it. My supervisor told me that retirement would be safer than making accusations against respected officials." "Did you tell the police?" Alana asked. "I did. They said it was probably mechanical failure." "Who supervised that investigation?" Lena's eyes moved toward the rear of the courtroom. Police Chief Warren Pike stood beside the exit. "He did." Chief Pike's face remained blank. Judge Hale looked from Pike to Denton. The case was no longer a single broken investigation. It was beginning to look like a protected system. She ordered Marcus released from county custody under monitored home confinement. The prosecution argued that he remained a convicted arsonist. Judge Hale answered that his conviction had become legally unstable. When the bailiff removed Marcus's handcuffs, Nia rushed into his arms. The courtroom cameras captured the moment, and within an hour the video spread across the country. A burned violin had stopped a prison sentence. A black teenager had challenged a fire marshal, a district attorney, and a judge. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. "Nia, did you know what was on the recording?" "Mr. Brooks, are you planning to sue the city?" "Judge Hale, are you reopening the Marston Towers case?" Marcus held his daughter's hand and kept walking. He wanted to take her home, lock every door, close every curtain, and pretend the world outside no longer existed. But when they reached Alana's car, Nia noticed a white envelope beneath the windshield wiper. There was no name on it. Inside was a photograph of her leaving the burned arts center. A red circle had been drawn around her face. On the back, someone had written 5 words. "The next fire needs a witness." Marcus immediately pulled Nia behind him. Alana photographed the envelope without touching it and called courthouse security. Judge Hale received the news before leaving her chambers. She ordered protection for Marcus, Nia, Lena Ortiz, and every person connected to the recovered recording. Chief Pike volunteered to assign officers. Judge Hale refused. Until his role in the missing witness statement was understood, she would not place the witnesses under his department's control. Instead, she contacted the state attorney general and requested an independent investigative unit. That decision changed everything. For years, complaints involving Denton, Pike, and Kessler had remained inside Fairmont's institutions. Reports moved from one local office to another until they disappeared. Now outsiders were entering the system. By midnight, state investigators had seized the fire marshal's computers, Hopewell Center's financial servers, and backup records from Kessler Urban Development. Judge Hale remained in her chambers reading the Marston Towers case. The official file contained hundreds of pages, yet a reference in the index led to a missing folder marked Hale Family Communications. Another document showed that Deputy Investigator Raymond Denton had collected electrical samples from the building. Those samples were later declared contaminated and destroyed. A handwritten note from Tomas Rivera insisted that a construction crew had replaced wires in the electrical room 2 days before the fire. No one had followed up. Judge Hale sat alone, staring at the photograph of Tomas attached to his arrest report. She had spent 12 years hating him. She had imagined him ignoring warnings, cutting corners, and leaving residents to die. Now she wondered whether he had been another convenient man placed beneath a mountain of manufactured evidence. A knock sounded at her door. Calvin Rusk entered. He no longer looked like the confident prosecutor who had demanded Marcus's imprisonment that morning. His tie was loose. His hands trembled. "Your Honor, I need to tell you something before investigators find it themselves." Judge Hale closed the file. "Sit down." Rusk remained standing. "6 months ago, District Attorney Malcolm Voss ordered me to take personal control of the Brooks prosecution. He said it was politically sensitive." "What does that mean?" "He said the city needed a quick conviction to protect public confidence." "Did he instruct you to ignore evidence?" "Not directly. That is not an answer." Rusk looked toward the door. "When I asked about Marcus's alibi, Voss told me the witness statements were unreliable. Marcus had been repairing a broken heating system at New Promise Baptist Church on the night of the fire. 23 choir members saw him there until 11:45. The fire began at 12:17. Prosecutors argued that Marcus had enough time to drive to Hopewell Center. However, the shortest route required crossing the East Mercer toll bridge. Marcus's truck did not appear in the toll records. That information had never reached the defense. Judge Hale placed both hands on her desk. "Did you know the toll records cleared him?" "Not until tonight." "How did you learn?" "I searched the prosecution archive after the hearing." "Someone uploaded the toll report 7 months ago, then removed it from the active file." "Who removed it?" Rusk swallowed. "My account did." Judge Hale stood. "Did you delete the report?" "No, I had never seen it." "Then somebody used your account." "That is what happened with Marcus. His login was used to steal money. My login was used to bury the evidence." Judge Hale's expression remained cold. "Why are you frightened?" Rusk reached into his jacket and removed a flash drive. "Because my account was not the only thing I found." The drive contained emails between Malcolm Voss, Fire Marshal Denton, Chief Pike, and executives at Kessler Urban Development. The messages never directly ordered a fire or a false conviction. They used phrases such as "remove the obstacle," "finalize the transition," "prepare a clean explanation," and "place the liability where it will be believed." But attached spreadsheets listed payments routed through consulting firms and nonprofit foundations. One payment of $80,000 had reached a company owned by Rusk's brother. Judge Hale looked at him. "Explain this." Rusk's eyes filled with shame. "My brother's business was failing. Voss arranged a city contract. He told me it was because I had earned his trust. And after receiving that money, you prosecuted Marcus Brooks. I believed the evidence." "You chose to believe it." Rusk lowered his head. "Yes." Judge Hale called the state investigators and placed Calvin Rusk under protective supervision. Before leaving, he gave them access to the prosecution's backup system. At 2 in the morning, investigators discovered that the financial theft attributed to Marcus had been scheduled from an external administrative account. His username appeared only after the transaction record was exported. The original data had been altered. His badge had also been cloned using equipment assigned to the Fire Marshal's Inspection Division. The evidence against Marcus had not merely been misunderstood, it had been manufactured piece by piece. The following morning, Nia woke inside a guarded hotel room and found her father sitting near the window. He had not slept. "Are they going to arrest the people who did this?" she asked. "They're trying to determine how many people were involved." "That means the answer is a lot." Marcus looked at his daughter. She was still wearing a bandage across her forehead. The burned violin rested inside a new protective case provided by investigators. "Your mother would have been proud of you," he said. Nia sat beside him. "She would have been angry that I went inside the building." She could be proud and angry at the same time. She was talented like that. Nia smiled briefly. Then she looked at the city outside. "Why did everyone believe you did it?" Marcus did not answer quickly. Some believed it because the evidence looked convincing. Some believed it because powerful people repeated it. And some believed it because a black custodian stealing money sounded more believable to them than rich officials burning a neighborhood. Nia stared at her hands. "Did Judge Hale believe that?" "I don't know. She was ready to send you away." "She was." "Then why should we trust her now?" Marcus thought about the judge stopping the hearing, confronting Denton, and reopening her own daughter's case. "Trust is not pretending someone never failed," he said. "Sometimes trust begins when a person finally admits that they did." At the courthouse, Judge Hale met with state investigator Paul Mercer and forensic accountant Denise Cole. Their team had uncovered a pattern involving 9 properties owned or acquired by Kessler Urban Development. Each property had suffered a major fire shortly before a scheduled inspection, historic designation hearing, or community ownership vote. After every fire, the land was declared unsafe. Kessler purchased it at a reduced price. Insurance companies paid millions. City redevelopment grants funded new construction. Poor residents and small businesses were displaced. In 4 cases, an employee or maintenance worker had been convicted. In 3 others, the suspected employee died before trial. Hopewell Center was the largest remaining property in a neighborhood Kessler planned to convert into luxury apartments, offices, and an entertainment district. The community center had prevented the company from combining the surrounding parcels. Marcus's conviction would have solved 2 problems. It would remove the employee who discovered the false reports and create public support for demolishing Hopewell. Denise placed a city map on the table. "This was never only insurance fraud," she explained. "They were reshaping entire neighborhoods through controlled destruction." Judge Hale pointed to Marston Towers. "What happened after that property burned?" "Kessler purchased the land through a subsidiary 8 months later." "What stands there now?" "The Kessler Grand Hotel." Judge Hale closed her eyes. Her daughter had died so a businessman could build a hotel. Tomas Rivera had died in prison so the real perpetrators could remain respected. When Judge Hale opened her eyes again, grief had been replaced by something colder. "Bring me everyone connected to the original investigation." State investigators arrested Raymond Denton that afternoon after finding badge cloning equipment in a locked cabinet beneath his office. Denton refused to cooperate. Chief Pike denied knowing anything about the fires, but investigators discovered that his private security company had received payments from Kessler's subcontractors. District Attorney Malcolm Voss claimed the emails were taken out of context. Gordon Kessler issued a public statement calling the investigation a politically motivated attack on a successful local business. By evening, television networks had surrounded the courthouse. Nia's burned violin appeared on every screen. Some commentators called her courageous. Others accused her of seeking attention and manipulating a grieving judge. Anonymous social media accounts claimed Marcus had forced his daughter to create the recording. Then an edited video appeared online showing Nia entering the damaged arts center with a recorder already in her hand. The original demolition workers' video showed something different. Nia had entered empty-handed. The edited version had been digitally altered. Someone was still trying to rebuild the lie. That night, the forensic audio team recovered the clearest section of the violin recording. 3 men were speaking inside Hopewell Center's music room. The first was Denton. The second was Malcolm Voss. The third voice belonged to Gordon Kessler. Their words were no longer fragments. "If Brooks talks about the inspection report, nobody approves demolition," Kessler said. "He won't be talking after tomorrow," Denton answered. Voss sounded nervous. "You said this would be handled as an accident." "An accident creates sympathy," Kessler said. "A theft creates anger. People protect a victim. They destroy a thief." "What about the girl's instrument?" Voss asked. "There's a case in the storage closet." Denton laughed. "By sunrise, there won't be enough left to identify the building." The recording continued. They discussed copying Marcus's badge, altering the financial transfer, placing gasoline inside his locker, and instructing a paid witness to report seeing his truck. Then Kessler mentioned Marston Towers. "We used the same structure before. One employee, one clean motive, one grieving city." Even Hale helped sell that conviction. Judge Hale listened without moving. Kessler's final words were even worse. "People do not need the truth. They need a story that lets them sleep." The next morning, the courthouse was filled before sunrise. Gordon Kessler entered through the front doors surrounded by attorneys. Malcolm Voss arrived separately. Chief Pike was brought in under state custody. Judge Hale had ordered a public evidentiary hearing connected to Marcus's motion for a new trial. The 3 men expected a limited argument over the recorder. They did not know investigators had recovered the complete audio. They did not know Rusk had agreed to testify. They did not know 9 former defendants, and their families were waiting in a secured room downstairs. When Judge Hale entered the courtroom, everyone rose. She sat behind the bench and looked at Marcus. He was no longer wearing jail clothes. He wore a dark suit borrowed from his pastor. Nia sat directly behind him, holding the burned violin case across her lap. Judge Hale addressed the courtroom. This hearing began as a review of evidence in the case of State versus Marcus Brooks. It has developed into an examination of deliberate corruption involving public officials, private companies, and officers entrusted with enforcing the law. Kessler's lead attorney stood. "Your Honor, this court is exceeding its authority and creating a media trial." Judge Hale looked at him. "The media did not clone a badge. The media did not falsify financial records. The media did not suppress witnesses. You have reached conclusions before hearing our defense." "No. I reached questions after discovering that the answers presented at trial were lies." The state's first witness was the forensic audio specialist. She explained the recorder's internal date, the heat damage, and the recovery process. Metadata confirmed the device had recorded continuously from 11:42 until 12:19 on the night of the fire. The defense suggested the voices might have been artificially generated. The specialist produced archived voicemail samples, public speeches, and recorded meetings. Denton's voice matched at 98.7%. Voss's matched at 99.1%. Kessler's matched at 99.4%. Then the courtroom heard the restored recording. Nia watched each defendant as his own words filled the room. Denton stared at the table. Voss appeared physically sick. Kessler remained still until the sentence about Judge Hale played. Even then, he showed no regret. He looked at the judge as if her daughter's death were merely an inconvenient business detail. When the recording ended, Judge Hale's voice was controlled. "Mr. Kessler, did your company acquire the Marston Towers property?" His attorney advised him not to answer. "Did you authorize payments to fire Marshal Denton?" No answer. "Did you instruct officials to frame Marcus Brooks?" No answer. Judge Hale nodded. "Your silence is your right. It is not your protection from evidence." Calvin Rusk entered under guard. He admitted that he had accepted professional favors linked to Malcolm Voss. He admitted dismissing concerns raised by Alana Reed. He admitted caring more about winning a major case than understanding whether the case was true. "I told myself I was following evidence," Rusk said. "But I only followed the evidence that made my job easier." Voss's attorney approached him aggressively. "You are facing criminal charges. Isn't it true that you invented this story to protect yourself?" Rusk looked toward Marcus. "No story can protect me from what I did." "You expect this court to believe that respected officials built an entire case against one custodian. They did not see him as one custodian. They saw him as a man no one important would defend." Marcus lowered his eyes. Rusk continued. "I helped them because I believed a conviction mattered more than a question. I cannot undo that, but I can stop lying." The next witnesses were the people harmed by Kessler's earlier fires. Tomas Rivera's widow testified that her husband had reported strangers working inside the electrical room before Marston Towers burned. A bakery owner named Sheila Price described being accused of disabling a gas line after refusing to sell her store to a Kessler subsidiary. A maintenance worker named Daniel Cho had spent 6 years in prison for a warehouse fire. Investigators now found that Denton had personally collected and transported every major piece of evidence used against him. One by one, families entered the courtroom carrying photographs, letters, and records. The conspiracy was no longer a collection of files. It had faces. It had children who grew up visiting parents in prison. It had marriages destroyed by accusations. It had elderly people who died before hearing their names cleared. Finally, Alana called Nia Brooks. The black teenager walked to the witness stand with the burned violin in her hands. Kessler's attorney objected. "The instrument itself has no evidentiary value." Nia placed it on the table. "It has value to me." Judge Hale allowed her to keep it. Alana asked Nia about the recorder, the scholarship rehearsal, and the moment she entered the damaged center. "Why did you interrupt the sentencing rather than give the recorder to police?" Alana asked. Nia looked toward Chief Pike. "Because the police had already helped build the case against my father." "Why did you believe Judge Hale would listen?" Nia turned toward the bench. "I didn't know if she would." "Then why risk it?" "Because she was the last person in the room who could stop what was happening." Kessler's attorney rose for cross-examination. "You love your father, yes. You would do anything to keep him out of prison. I would do anything truthful. But you entered a condemned building illegally. Yes. You interrupted a judge. Yes. You accused respected men before the recording had been verified. Yes. Then you admit your emotions controlled your behavior." Nia's voice remained steady. "My emotions made me afraid. The evidence made me speak." The attorney walked closer. "Isn't it possible your father told you what he wanted you to hear?" "No." "Isn't it possible you misunderstood the recording?" "No." "You seem very certain for a 16-year-old." Nia looked at the 3 defendants. They seemed very certain nobody would listen to a 16-year-old. A quiet reaction moved across the courtroom. The attorney returned to his table. Judge Hale asked Nia one question. "What did your mother tell you about that violin?" Nia touched its damaged wooden body. "She said music carries truth into places where ordinary words get ignored." Judge Hale looked at the recorder resting inside the evidence bag. Your mother was right. Marcus was the final witness. He described the inspection reports, Kessler's job offer, the missing phone, and the moment police arrived at his house. They searched everything, he said. They put me in handcuffs where my daughter could see. One detective told me confessing would protect her from watching a long trial. Did you ever consider confessing? Alana asked. Marcus looked at Nia. For one night. The courtroom became silent. I thought if I accepted a shorter sentence, maybe she could move forward. Maybe she could finish school without reporters following her. Then she visited me the next morning and said she would rather spend 10 years proving the truth than one day pretending a lie was real. Nia began crying. Marcus continued. She saved me before she ever found that recorder. Alana returned to her seat. Judge Hale reviewed the evidence for several minutes. Then she spoke. The conviction of Marcus Brooks was built through falsified records, cloned security credentials, planted physical evidence, suppressed witnesses, and deliberate misconduct by officials acting in coordination with private interests. She looked at Marcus. This court vacates every count against you. Nia covered her mouth. Marcus closed his eyes as if the words were too heavy to receive all at once. Judge Hale continued. Mr. Brooks, you are an innocent man. Your record will be cleared immediately. All restrictions on your freedom are terminated. The courtroom erupted. Marcus turned and Nia ran into his arms. For 7 months, every embrace between them had been restricted by chains, glass, guards, or time. Now nothing stood between them. Judge Hale allowed the moment to continue before raising her gavel. When the courtroom quieted, she addressed the accused officials. Raymond Denton, Malcolm Voss, Warren Pike, and Gordon Kessler. The evidence presented establishes probable cause for charges including conspiracy, arson, murder, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, fraud, bribery, witness intimidation, and the deliberate prosecution of innocent people. State officers surrounded the defendants. Kessler finally stood. You think arresting me changes anything? He asked. Half this city was built with my money. Judge Hale met his stare. Then the city will learn how much of its foundation was paid for with suffering. You benefited from the system as much as anyone. You believed the Rivera case. You helped destroy him. The accusation struck the courtroom harder than his denial. Judge Hale did not hide from it. Yes, she said. I believed what I was shown because the story satisfied my anger. I wanted someone to blame for my daughter's death. I allowed grief to become certainty. Kessler smiled faintly. Then you are no better than us. I was wrong, Judge Hale answered. The difference is that I will not continue being wrong simply because admitting it is painful. She ordered the officers to take him into custody. As Kessler passed Nia, he looked at the burned violin. All of this because of a child's toy. Nia stepped closer to her father. No, all of this because you thought nobody small could hurt somebody powerful. 3 months later, an independent commission reopened 21 fire investigations. 7 convictions were overturned during the first year. Families received compensation, public apologies, and access to records that had been hidden for decades. Lena Ortiz returned to the fire department as an advisor on investigative ethics. Calvin Rusk pleaded guilty to obstruction and misconduct. His cooperation reduced his sentence, but it did not erase it. Before entering prison, he wrote a public statement admitting that corruption survived not only through cruel people, but through ambitious people who found excuses to remain silent. Chief Pike, Denton, and Voss faced federal prosecution. Gordon Kessler's properties were seized after investigators proved they had been purchased through fraud, insurance crimes, and money laundering. The Kessler Grand Hotel, built where Marston Towers once stood, was sold. A portion of the proceeds funded compensation for the victims' families. Judge Hale personally signed the order clearing Tomas Rivera's name. She then visited his widow. She did not bring cameras. She did not bring officials. She carried only the original case file and a letter she had written by hand. "I cannot return the years your husband lost," she said. "I cannot return him to you, but I needed to tell you that I helped believe a lie about him." Mrs. Rivera looked at the judge for a long time. "Are you asking me to forgive you?" "No," Judge Hale answered. "I am asking you to know that his name is clean." The widow accepted the letter. "Then spend the rest of your career making sure another family does not need a child to interrupt a courtroom before someone listens." Judge Hale nodded. "That is exactly what I intend to do." Hopewell Community Arts Center was rebuilt using money recovered from Kessler's companies. The city offered to name the building after Judge Hale. She refused. Instead, the new sign read, "The CAMILLEBROOKS Center for Music and Justice." On opening night, hundreds of people filled the auditorium. Marcus became the center's director of facilities and youth programs. He created free workshops teaching teenagers how to document unsafe conditions, report corruption, and understand their legal rights. Alana Reed established a small office inside the building where families could receive free legal consultations. Judge Hale attended without her robe. She sat beside Tomas Rivera's widow in the front row. When the lights dimmed, Nia walked onto the stage carrying her mother's violin. A restoration specialist had repaired the cracked wood and replaced the burned strings. Dark marks remained across its surface because Nia refused to have them removed. She wanted the violin to remember. Nia raised the bow. For a moment, she looked toward her father. Marcus smiled through tears. Then she looked at Judge Hale. The judge had avoided music since her daughter's death. Concert halls reminded her of Lillian, who used to play piano badly and proudly. That night, she remained seated. Nia began to play. The first note was soft and uncertain. The second was stronger. By the time the melody reached the back of the auditorium, the audience had become completely still. The violin did not sound damaged. It sounded deeper. Every repaired crack seemed to carry part of the music. Judge Hale closed her eyes. She saw her daughter. She saw Tomas Rivera entering prison. She saw Marcus standing in chains. She saw a black teenager walking into court covered in ash, while powerful adults laughed at the idea that she could change anything. Then she understood the lesson Nia had forced an entire city to confront. Justice did not always arrive through powerful speeches or perfect institutions. Sometimes it entered through a broken door. Sometimes it came carrying evidence everyone else had abandoned. Sometimes it looked too young, too poor, too frightened, or too unimportant to challenge the people in control. But power had one weakness. It became careless when it stopped believing ordinary people mattered. Gordon Kessler believed a custodian could be sacrificed. Denton believed a firefighter could be threatened into silence. Voss believed files could disappear without consequence. Chief Pike believed a badge could protect the crimes committed behind it. They were almost right. They controlled the evidence, the investigators, the public story, and the courtroom schedule. But they did not control the burned recorder. They did not control a father who refused to confess. And they did not control a daughter who loved him enough to walk into a courtroom where nobody expected her voice to matter. When Nia finished playing, the audience rose. Marcus climbed onto the stage and embraced her. Judge Hale stood with everyone else, applauding until her hands hurt. The violin had survived the fire. The truth had survived the people who tried to bury it. And a city that had spent years trusting powerful lies finally learned that justice does not begin when a judge speaks. It begins when someone who has every reason to be afraid decides to speak first.